Hello and welcome to Entirely English. We are reaching the end of our naval idioms, English idioms which are still commonly used, that originated in the Navy, and we have reached the letter W. I have about 7 of these, so I'm going to keep them short so I can get them all onto one recording. That said, let's get into it with a wide berth. To give something a wide berth more exactly. The word birth, not like B-I-R-T-H, the birth of a baby, but berth, B-E-R-T-H, meaning essentially a place to rest. In the old Elizabethan Navy, the berth was the place where the ship would stop at the dock. The berth was its location where it tied up. And sailors began to use it to mean where they slept. Like, would you give me a berth for the night? Would you give me a bed for the night? But the wide berth meant a distance between you and something else. So we talked about icebergs in a previous video. So when you saw an iceberg, you would give it a wide berth. You would leave a large distance between your ship and the iceberg because you don't know what's underneath. When you're passing under the ship, you would give it a wide berth because although maybe 10 meters seems quite far, with the movement of the sea and the wind, it'd be easy for them to collide. So to give something a wide berth was to leave a big distance between you and it. And that's how we use it today. We'd say, when you're driving down the road and you see a parked car, give it a wide berth. It means don't drive close to it, the driver might open the door. We can use it figuratively as well. That deal you've been offered, I'd give that a wide berth. In other words, don't go near it, it's dodgy. Our next one, you might be surprised to hear, is walk the plank. Many people think this is just a thing that was invented by the movies or the novel writers, but actually it was real, to walk the plank. When ships had a mutiny, the mutineers would often force the officers to walk the plank. So in case you're not familiar, they put up a plank, tie it to the side of the boat, and you'd walk out and then fall into the sea, into the sharks that are waiting below. Why not just kill them? Well, killing them would be murder. But if they walked the plank, they were killing themselves. You could say, I didn't do it. He chose to jump into the sea, to walk the plank. And we use it these days to mean to do something dangerous, something risky. So I walked the plank when I told the boss what an idiot he was being. You risk destroying yourself. Our next one is a great phrase. It is, what a palaver. What a palaver. So palaver was a word that the British sailors picked up from Portuguese sailors. And palaver with them meant to communicate, to have a discussion or a debate about something. If you imagine palaver, it's very much like the word parley, which became very popular. You must have seen it in the Pirates of the Caribbean films. Parley, meaning a discussion. You want to parley, you want to talk with the captain of another ship. That came from the French. But palaver with the Portuguese, debating or arguing with the chiefs about the slaves, began to mean a dispute or a quarrel, as a childish kind of argument. We use it kind of to emphasize how difficult it is to get to the point. Maybe the person you're talking to is long-winded, they just keep talking and talking and talking. So you can talk about that as a palaver. I might say, I had to apply for my visa. What a palaver. It's just this expression meaning it was so ridiculous, so chaotic, all this process. You had to go to this office and get this document, then get it signed in another office, then go back to the first office and find out that it's not valid because you have to have it stamped before it's signed. What a palaver. Now the next one, the key word is wheelhouse. That's why it's in W. And the phrase we often use is not in my wheelhouse, or that is in my wheelhouse. Really interesting when you look online at explanations for this, because many sites claim it's from the early 1900s to do with baseball. Yeah, right. It's not exactly a Royal Navy one originally. it was to do with the small boats, like the fishing boats. They would often have a wheelhouse, which is, you know, the wheel you see on the ships from Elizabethan, Jacobean, etc. There on the deck where they've got a good view all around. Or the smaller boats, like the fishing boats, they would have a little house around it. So basically no view from behind, but they could see from the front and the sides, and they were protected from the weather. That was the wheelhouse. It became used on the bigger ships. You'd see it on cruise liners, where the pilot of the ship stands. That's the wheelhouse, the house with the wheel for controlling. So if something is in your wheelhouse, it is your speciality. You are the master of it, or very good at it. So you say, English lessons for foreign speakers. That's right in my wheelhouse. Making YouTube videos, not so much in my wheelhouse. I'm trying, still learning. Our next is to weather the storm. If you remember in our last but one video, idioms beginning with U, we had to be under the weather. And that was the area of the ship that was taking the brunt of the storm. And it became, anyway, go back and look at that one. So the weather is obviously very important to those old sailing ships. And again, in previous idioms, we talked about finding a safe harbour and things like that when there was a storm or when there was bad weather. Sometimes you couldn't find a place like that, so you had to weather the storm. Weather in this idiom is the verb to weather something. If you imagine a fence, you build a wooden fence, after a few months it becomes grey, kind of shiny. That's because it's weathered, it's been affected by the weather. Sometimes you see these old cowboys and their faces are like leather and they're all creased because they are weathered. They've been affected by the sun and the heat and the wind. So to weather the storm was to endure it, to let it affect you, but to keep going. And today we use it to talk about any situation that we endured, which was harsh, maybe approaching violence, very loud, very uncomfortable. So when I came home at 3 o'clock this morning, drunk, my wife screamed at me for 3 hours. I just had to weather the storm. I had to take it. I didn't react. I weathered the storm and then promised to take her to Disneyland for a holiday. Our next is to wind up. Now, most of us think of this one as relating to clockwork, like the old watches. They had a spring in them and you would wind them, and the spring would get tighter and tighter, and then when you released it, the spring would slowly unwind to activate the hands of the clock or the watch. But actually, this wind up comes from the sailors, and they would have the duty to, when they pull the sails, there'd be all this rope on the deck, and they'd have to wind it up, wrap it around some spinnacle or something. So just like in the clockwork, to wind up is to tighten this thing around something else to make it very secure. And it became, maybe because it was a boring job or it was a punishment, to wind somebody up was to cause them stress. Maybe for your amusement, maybe because you're vindictive, but you'd say, hey, your car's just been hit by a truck. Oh no, just winding you up. It's just a joke, just trying to get a reaction from you. Did you really get tickets to the Susie and the Banshees concert, or are you just winding me up? Causing me this aggravation. And the last one I want to throw in here is women and children first. You must have heard this. It's become a bit like the Hippocratic Oath for sailors. When a ship is sinking, they will allow the women and children to get into the lifeboats first. Apparently this, the first recorded use of this phrase was in 1852 on the HMS Birkenhead. The ship was carrying 480 troops and about 26 women and children. And when the ship started to sink, obviously everybody rushed towards the lifeboats. There weren't enough lifeboats for everybody, and the captain bellowed, "Stand fast!" and stop. Women and children first. So the women and children had to get in the boats first. One sailor to control the boat for them. Sadly, almost all of the troops on board were drowned or consumed by sharks, but on the other hand, all of the women and children survived. And this is a phrase we always associate it with the sea, the navy, ships, any cruise liner that's sinking, the women and children first, apart from the Oceania ship. That's the one where the crew abandoned everybody else, but that's a story for another time. And we use it nowadays mostly in a jokey fashion. You get to I don't know if this relates to your country, but you're driving long distance, you stop at a petrol station, and everybody wants to go to the toilets, and the wife would be like, women and children first. She goes to the toilet first. Or, yeah, any situation is normally used as a joke. Anyway, hopefully I'll be able to edit this video down to a manageable size and upload it, and I'll see you for, I think we're going to put X, Y, and Z on the same video. This will be the last recording next. Mainly because X, I have a very tenuous one. Y, I've got a couple. Z, I've got zip. So, if you know any beginning with Z, I've searched and searched and can't find any. Pop them in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. Any other thoughts, any other ideas, pop them in the comments below. I hope you liked this video. If so, please do click the like button. If you want to keep up to date with these recordings and the next section, which is going to be manners, click the subscribe. And I'll see you for the final video in this series. Bye bye now.